Sure.
Good afternoon, and thanks everybody for hopping on ThreatX's live Q&A. Today, talking with our experts about the evolution of DDoS and how it continues to increase in efficiency, effectiveness, and really scale to new heights. In this interactive section, we welcome our live audience members to ask questions, anything that comes to mind, pop it into the Q&A box or the chat, and we'll be sure to answer it in the next 30 minutes. But with that, let's hop forward and introduce our experts. So today, helping me with our session is Jeff Gardner. Jeff Gardner, feel free to come and say hi.
Hello.
Jeff is a tenured CISO with over 20 years of experience in InfoSec, covering retail, healthcare, manufacturing, really the gambit of different industries. But he also holds a library of certifications from CISSP, many more, and is a past veteran as well. So Jeff, thanks again for hopping on and joining us for today's conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Our next expert, Neil Weitzel, joins us, our manager of the SOC here at ThreatX. Neil has 15 years of experience in a variety of different roles, from customer support all the way up to leading security programs. He's led security architecture deployments and defined security best practices, has led lectures in the past for DEF CON, OWASP, and even in his time acted as a lecturer at University of Indiana for software engineering. So Neil, again, thanks again for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Always happy to be here.
Lastly, I'm Cindy Cafaro. I'm a product expert here at ThreatX who's focused on cybersecurity solutions and API AppSec, but is experienced in the past working in incident response and security automation. So again, this is our team for today, and thanks everybody for hopping on with us. To kick off the session, Jeff, would you mind start just by level setting some of the attacks that we'll be talking about today?
Sure. So again, before we dive in, kind of want to break, and Neil, please feel free as another technical expert in case I get anything wrong. This is one man's memory, could be faulty. But there's three main types of DDoS attacks, depending on how they want to attack your system. They're either going to be volumetric, measured in gigabytes per second, protocol-based, measured in packets per second, or application layer, which we're going to be talking about today, which is requests per second. So volumetric attacks, known as floods, because they flood you with requests like unwanted pings, basically send as much traffic to a site to overwhelm the bandwidth. Protocol attacks, either exploiting intended functionality or flaws in the design of a protocol in order to do similar things like TCP handshake, SYN floods, resource exhaustion. Those are examples of protocol-based attacks. Lastly, what we're going to be talking about today, application layer attacks. So those typically include things like hitting a web server in a specific way so that one single HTTP request can cause that server to execute a number of internal resources requests, load numerous files, basically lead to resource exhaustion and slow down internally. How'd I do covering those, Mr. Neil?
No, you're spot on. Another way that I kind of sliced up in my head is just kind of using the OSI model. And, kind of today we're going to be really focusing on layer 7, application. So that's a good way to kind of another good way to slice the data.
So please do not throw sausage pizza away. The fun and friendly way of memorizing the OSI model. If you don't know what that is, remember, I think that's called a mnemonic or something.
Yeah.
Remember that mnemonic. I have trouble remembering transport. Okay, cool. But yeah, it's a fun way to do it. So talk about our first attack. So we're going to be focusing on RPS, or request per second based attacks that have taken place between 2021 and 2022. So this is kind of the first one, simply because, and Sid, I don't know if you agree, this is kind of one that broke the mold as compared to the others. So, previous, DDoS-based attacks prior to this one in July of 2021 were anywhere from 5 to 8 million RPS. This was kind of like the first one, like it says, 3 times larger than any that were seen before. But the thing with this one is it wasn't like spread out over time. This was literally like a very concentrated attack, literally probably lasted like, 1 minute, but 330 million requests in that minute. So you're talking, a sustained burst of over, 17.2 million, 15 million sustained burst, powered by a botnet, Mirai. If nobody knows what Mirai is, it's a fun name. It means future in Japanese. It was just, they got to be fun with their code names. Discovered in 2016. The reason why I specifically don't like this one is it has worm-like functionality in it. So once you get infected by this botnet, it's not like, okay, great, controls your device and they got to go and attack others. This thing will actively seek out other devices on the network over Telnet 23 and 2323, brute force passwords, and later variants can even start exploiting 0 days in order to start establishing those C2 channels. Majority of it was out of Indo, and then India and Brazil were the second part. But it was just this introduction to the furtherance of how this is going to grow over time. So you're going to see like subsequent attacks. This is the first big like, oh crap moment for DDoS protection providers to go, do we even have the resources to manage some of these? What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, exactly. I think that we felt like we were in a good spot in terms of the arms race. And then this shows up and we're all like, oh, wait, maybe not. I think we got to check ourselves. So nail on the head.
Yeah, I definitely think this is the first attack that started to raise people's eyebrows and realize that, hey, they are starting to climb to new heights. And we'll see more of those in just a second.
Yeah, scary more of those.
Yeah, while you're switching there, I'll just remind, if anybody has any questions, comments, toss them in the chat or, use the question parameter, and we're happy to, jam out with you a little bit on some of these topics.
Yeah, so, continuing along in our trend of fun and friendly botnets, this is another one. It followed shortly, not even a couple months afterwards. Target was, I'm going to butcher it, Yandex. They were an internet services company. Basically, it was the largest DDoS attack ever in RUNET, or Russia's internet. And what was kind of different from this is it wasn't just your typical run-of-the-mill IoT blinky box devices that were compromised. This was actually like network devices of a specific vendor. It was MikroTik network devices that were compromised by the Maris botnet. So it was actually the infrastructure that's powering your network was utilized against basically an ISP in Russia. So what's special about Maris? Well, this fun actually means plague in Latvian, so it's great, and it was kind of heralded as the return of the Mirai botnet because Mirai kind of subsided a little bit. But what was different from this one is it specifically targeted those network devices. Special is it was a SOX4 proxy, so SOX allows application data to be relayed across a firewall, even if that firewall would normally block those kind of packets. And again, it utilized a feature of the HTTP protocol called HTTP pipelining for this attack. So if you don't know what that is, basically allows multiple requests to be sent over a single TCP connection without having to wait for that ACK. Like it just rapid fires those HTTP requests, again, leading to that RPS-based attack. And all the attacking devices had 2 ports open, 5678 and 2000. So that was kind of the way they knew it was that same botnet on all these attacker devices. Initial reports were 56,000 devices, but I actually dug into the numbers a little bit shortly after creating this. And from the US alone, it was like over 133,000 compromised network devices that participated in this. So you could just see this speed and this scale, like, people are learning from other botnets and going, hey, how can I do better and do more? So yeah, that's where we're at on this one. And I can't wait to see what's going to be coming along further. Well, I can't wait in pejorative terms.
Yeah, and what's funny is if we hop over to the next botnet, this is almost exactly a year jump. So last one, September 2021. Fast forward to June 2022. What's interesting is this 26 million RPS DDoS attack shared a similar botnet. Maris is really the original botnet that started to spawn all these smarter botnets. And what was associated with this one was Mantis. And the Mantis botnet was actually named after the mantis shrimp because it's small, but it's mighty. So I'll help explain kind of the behaviors of this attack and how it kind of fit into this Mantis profile. So June 2021, a attack started to happen that was targeting a provider, and essentially what they realized is that a majority of the devices that were powering this attack came from a cloud provider. And so what that told them was that each one of those nodes was either a compromised virtual machine or a compromised server. You know, these weren't devices that were Internet of Things devices. These weren't like random smaller devices that don't have small compute power. These are really powerful devices that are actually powering this botnet. So perfect example, put it plainly, this botnet was on average 4,000 times stronger because of the utilization of those virtual machines and servers. As Jeff mentioned before, the year before, we saw DDoS attacks last about 15 seconds. This DDoS attack lasted about 30 seconds, so double that time. But again, on average, it generated 26 million requests per second, and in total, 221 million requests throughout the entire attack. So if you think about that compared to what providers were typically used to years before that, being around the 5 to 7 RPS, million RPS model, it's astounding how much it's grown. What's also really interesting is that this attack shares similar origins for their IPs, so locations happening in Indonesia, United States, Brazil, and Russia.
You make a really good point. Like, you know, we were looking, you know, at the very first onset, you know, RPS of like 10 million and less. Like that was like our big attacks. And then we saw the 17, and then immediately, even a year later, another 10 on top of that. So I think you'll see the trend here of things getting bigger and harder.
Yeah, and I like how, you know, you can start to see a trend of them as technology kind of grows and gets more wide stream adoption. Like it starts off individual laptops, like botnets. Now you're starting to utilize virtual machines, and like with cloud technology coming in, microservices, serverlets, containers, you know, infrastructure as code. When's that next breakpoint going to be where it's like, we don't even need to compromise any of your devices. We could just spin up 10,000 microservices that are just going to bombard you with traffic in an instant and then gone. And it's not like you can block that. But you can't block that. Like, okay, we're going to go, you know, block these IPs, or, you know, like they don't even have to stand up a C2 network. Like it's just an immediate bam, bam, and you're down.
What's really interesting too is if you compare the amount of devices that were needing to be compromised, the one that you talked about earlier, Jeff, was what, hundreds of thousands of devices, whereas this one generated almost two times the amount, and it was only 5,000 devices that were compromised.
Yeah, that's one thing that's kind of like, you know, you'll notice that these boil down to a lot of like you know, the Mantis and the Maris, and, you know, Mantis in general, you know, kind of uses like really sophisticated devices that has it can punch harder, but like Maris will a lot of times, you know, be more along the lines of, all right, we're gonna, you know, have a lot more smaller punches.
Exactly. And I think we'll see that, especially for harder punches, as we roll up to the 46 million RPS. So this is one that definitely broke the news. I think it almost overshadowed the attack before, because coincidentally enough, these DDoS attacks actually happened the same day, which was really interesting to dig into in the research. So Google actually reported this wave of DDoS attacks, and really it started out slow, which was the interesting aspect of the behavior of this attack. So it started off slow, but then it peaked at the 46 million RPS point. It was 76% larger than any previous record. And to give a sense of the scale, it was like receiving all the daily requests of Wikipedia within 10 seconds time. So just a ton of traffic getting generated. We talked about the last attack, how it only lasted about 30 seconds. This attack lasted over an hour. Again, it started really slow, so it wasn't as aggressive, but it grew up within that hour to the 46 RPS point. It leveraged around 136 countries, so devices from 136 countries, but still used the same amount of devices as the last one, but was exponentially stronger. So around 5,000 devices were actually powering this attack.
So kind of related to what you have on the slide, there's a question, which is, you mentioned like Mantis was in the last one as well. So the question is, why do we see the same botnets resurface from time to time? Why can't we just block Mantis or Maris or Mirai or others? So I asked, I'll throw it out to you guys and then I'll kind of answer it as well. I think we may have potentially covered it, but
yeah, so you kind of covered it in your last explanation of being able to spin up, it is the arms race, right? Attackers are trying to find like new ways to spin up something very quickly, tear it down and attack, but then also new technology and vulnerabilities, right? For example, like in the case where we are leveraging IoT devices, those are kind of notoriously weak in terms of security. And so if you know of a new vulnerability or something that like got deployed, and hey, no one's going around like updating all their IoTs. Okay, and I can now leverage those for my attack. I'm gonna you showed and check for all of the existence of them, who has an external IP. I'm gonna get my CNC software on it, and now I'm just gonna fire up my botnet. So a lot of it has to do with like, yeah, we're using that software, but in different ways, or using it on different machines.
See, I would kind of take a different tack and say, why do we keep seeing these same things reoccur? Because they work. Like, especially when it comes
fair,
especially when it comes to like we were talking about, Maris attacking network devices. Look at patching and OS hardening on network appliances. It's even harder to upgrade those than it is to patch and upgrade our servers and our workstations. So what's the likelihood from the day that an exploit's discovered by a bad guy to the day that, well, it's patched by the vendor itself, but then also, when are you going to patch it on your devices? There's probably going to be a significant amount of time,
especially network devices, because
yeah,
when are we going to do that? When is the network going to be unavailable?
Yeah, and especially if it powers, especially if you're not in the cloud and it's traditional network infrastructure, that requires coordination, downtime, like testing to make sure things come back before you bring it online. There's a whole sequence of events. It's not just like, okay, let's put it in HA, patch one, we'll flip it all around, patch the other. It's a little more complicated on the infrastructure side. So it's like, even with the best intentions, it's still going to take a time. And then even if you patch it, who's to say that they can't simply just tweak that malware? Like in the case of Mirai, let's just tweak it a little bit, add new functionality. So, hey, cool, you're blocking brute forcing. Now we're going to exploit 0 days because I know you haven't patched that nonsense. So it's just this battle back and forth.
Before we hop into Neil's next point, we did just get our first question from the audience. And again, we encourage you guys to continue to post questions. We're happy to answer them throughout the presentation. But Jeff, I'll pass this over to you first. Can you explain how bad actors control botnets? And to what degree can you start to understand if there's a specific attack targeting you versus getting caught in like a wider net?
I mean, so I'll answer this in a somewhat scattershot-ish fashion. So to what degree should we consider ourselves a specific target? If you operate in certain industries, you should consider yourselves always a target. Like finance and healthcare or government, just consider yourselves a target of these APT actors. It's not kind of like you're going to be caught in the net like some other smaller. If you have any kind of presence, if there's any kind of publicity, if you're in the public eye at all, you are going to be probed at the very least to see if you're vulnerable for some of these things. Most, like you see these 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 devices, you're just caught in the net. You're on the internet, you're out there, you have vulnerabilities in your software or open ports that just got missed somehow. Targets of opportunity, why not? It's free infrastructure. I'm not paying for this, so I'm just going to utilize you. Bad actors control botnets. And this is where I want to kind of tag team with Neil on this one. So there's different ways of doing it. It's normally through command and control channels. Sometimes they can kind of pre-program these with instructions like drop and deploy, but most of the time it's they'll get a dropper on your system. It'll look to see if your system's exploitable. If it is, it'll drop the payload, which is usually that botnet that we're talking about. It'll establish an outbound, connection to whatever their infrastructure may be and wait for instructions. What that infrastructure is, that's the problem. It could be a homegrown, C2 server. If you want to go back old school, it was IRC and paste bin, Telegram channels. Like there's innumerable ways how they can issue commands to these botnets, but it's usually through that C2 channel. Neil, over to you.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the reason is because they want to be able to make tweaks, right? Like so like some of these attacks, if you look at like the graphs of how they, will be an advanced persistent attack, the reason why they're persistent is because like they have to be able to maneuver a little bit. Hey, you blocked this particular way that we are requesting, or you've been able to thwart the attack from this angle. Well, I want to be able to shift as well. I mean, it really is kind of a an arms race in that sense. And I use that a lot, but it's very true because we're trying to block these, but at the same time, they're trying to figure out ways around those blocks. And, unless like you have some sort of like logic in the, what you're going to kind of drop and deploy, that is like a known good 0 day that no one's going to patch. It's the best way to be able to like put in new payloads or try something different in terms of how you're going to make these requests or change the targets or, the routing of which you're using for these requests.
So I actually have a question from my brain to you, Neil, not from the audience, but I mean, like coming from traditional, detection response land, with the evolution of malware, we've seen like TrickBot and being able to do some of that recon to see like, okay, who are they using for AV? Like, can we even compromise this system? Have botnets themselves, I know they're doing some, but have botnets themselves reached that level of sophistication, or am I just giving them like a great new idea by watching?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I don't think the bots themselves are doing it, but I mean, I think the people who are using the bots are doing it. And I mean, and that's also kind of a plug to, you don't want to be caught up in becoming a part of a botnet either. I think that's like another part of it. So like, if you're using particular software and things like that, you want to make sure that it is secure so that, you're not like, hey, look, I was part of that. Like I was part of the world record.
We do not.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, let's talk about this this one here. So it does say, the total request volume here is actually 225.3 billion requests. Yeah, that is billion with a B. So it's just like a massive number of requests. Now, why is it so much more than like some of these other ones? Because this attack actually lasted 4 hours. Like this was just inundation for a long sustained period of time. I mean, it's only like 1 in every 10, I think, is what was reported. DDoS attacks last for over an hour. We had a couple here, but this one lasted 4 times that. So that's kind of why the sheer number of requests is so high. They did use 70,000 devices, and these were mostly IoT style devices. So that's kind of why this one is a little bit more on the Maris side of things. So this was, I think it peaked at 3.9 million requests per second. It averaged around 1.8 million requests per second, but in general, it was sustaining like 3.1 million requests per second at like long intervals. So, it'd be like a very high and then drop for a little bit, and then really high at that 3 million over that course of 4 hours. And this was all against a Chinese telecommunications company. It's like one client. So like, it's definitely one for the record books in that sense. In general, yeah, it was 170. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. Different nodes, not 70,000. And it was mostly from the US, Brazil, and Indonesia. But yeah, this one was one for the record books in that sense.
So this was like, wasn't the Usain Bolt of DDoS attacks, like some of the others, like short sprinters. This was like the Mo Farah, like the long distance runner, going back into the cross country.
Oh, good call. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to look at it because, I mean, of course, on the practitioner side of things, we have to be able to support or protect against both types of those DDoS attacks, the short sprinters and, you know, the long-term runners as well. So I think that brings us to the meat of the presentation, which is countermeasures. What can we actually suggest to do to protect yourselves, your organizations, your infrastructure, to not be a part of one of these botnets? And if by chance you do have traffic in the way, how do you protect yourselves against that high volumetric traffic?
You mean other than unplugging from the internet in general?
Other than unplugging from the internet.
Which isn't a bad strategy for our personal lives, but for business, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I mean, I know it says like use protection first. I'll kind of take a step back as well, because in order to protect, you need to be able, it kind of says, you know, the second bullet point, understand your environment. But in order to do that, you need to have visibility into your environment. So everything kind of starts with having eyes on. If you can't see, then you can't understand, and you thus can't protect. So having, you know, that 360-degree visibility, logging turned on, knowing, you know, what devices in your environment, knowing their capabilities, all that fun stuff lets you plan. Because again, like, I don't know if you agree, Neil, but like your home built application that you built inside your network, it may periodically almost DDoS itself with spikes. And if you don't have, you know, network monitoring, you don't understand that this application does that, you might throw up a solution and be like, oh my God, DDoS. No,
I can honestly tell you that has happened to a customer of ours, where, you know, one of their systems went down, and then on bringing it up, they DDoS themselves internally because it was trying to reconnect to all of the internal services. And so they're just like, how do we bring this back up in a safe way? And so again, like having not just like an active inventory of this is all the stuff I have, but also, you know, ways to tell when that inventory changes. Like that's really paramount when something new is happening or something changes, like a new device comes online or a new application is now being served. Like there has to be some regular way, whether that's the scans or just like, you know, hey, there's something that's requesting a new lease on, you know, the network. So like, let's look into that. Why?
Yeah. And like, along with that protection, I mean, the standards, like it says here, like have a WAF. And if you have a WAF, make sure it's in blocking mode. But before you throw it in blocking mode, test first. If it doesn't have an audit functionality, that's an issue, because then unless you have a lab, you're testing a production environment. And do things like follow hardening guides. Simple things like sanitizing your inputs on web forms, like all of these things that you could do. Just do the basics. Start with that first. Like a lot of people jump to black belt when they haven't even, like, they don't even understand like the white belt. So start at white and then move your way up to that 10th Dan over time.
That's a very fair point. I think that, you know, that gets overlooked a lot because everyone kind of either searches for that silver bullet or, like you're saying, like going to that black belt level, versus if you can master the basics, in a lot of ways, you're not the lowest hanging fruit. And so therefore, like attackers like, there's another one out there that I can just attack with less work. And so like you don't get caught up in some of these scenarios.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, Neil, thank you so much for pairing with me to walk through some of those DDoS examples and countermeasures. Protection first, actually utilize blocking, know the behaviors in your environment, use a behavior-based solution, don't just rely on signatures. And if everybody enjoyed the session today, feel free to join us for the next one on combating credential stuffing and account takeover. Our ThreatX expert that's going to be hopping on and joining us is Alex Gatz, our main security researcher. So again, we appreciate the time today, and we look forward to seeing you on our next ThreatX live Q&A.
So you're going to step on the gas for the next webinar? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. Awesome. Thanks,
And
everyone.
with that,
Thanks, everyone.
take care.